Welcome to another inspiring episode of Fearless in Faith. I'm your host, Esther, and today we're diving into a topic that's close to many of our hearts: faith in family life. How do we build a Christ-centered home in today's world? How can parents lead by example, and how can young people stand strong in their faith despite the challenges they face? To help us unpack this, we have a special father-daughter duo with us today. Michael Turner, a father of 5 who has been intentional about raising his children in faith, and his daughter, Lauren Turner, a teenager who is boldly living out her beliefs in a culture that often challenges them. Michael and Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Esther. I'm honored to be here and excited to share what God has taught me about leading a family in faith.
Thanks for having us. I think it's so important to talk about faith and family life because so many of my friends struggle with how to stay strong in their beliefs.
Michael, as a father of 5, what has been your approach to making faith a priority in your home? And what does it look like for parents to lead by example?
You know, Esther, when my wife and I got married, we made a commitment that our home would be centered around Christ. But let me be honest, it hasn't always been easy. Life gets busy. Work demands, school schedules, and just the day-to-day challenges of raising 5 kids can make it tempting to put faith on the back burner. But I've learned that if we don't intentionally make room for God in our home, something else will take his place. For us, prioritizing faith meant making sure our kids saw that our relationship with God was real, not just something we did on Sundays. We didn't want our children to think of faith as a church thing, but as the very foundation of our lives. That started with the simple things: praying together before meals, reading the Bible as a family, and creating an atmosphere where talking about Jesus was natural, not forced. One of the most defining moments for me as a father happened a few years ago when I lost my job unexpectedly. It was a really tough season for us financially, and I remember feeling this deep pressure to provide for my family. But instead of panicking in front of my kids, I decided to do something different. Every morning, I would sit at the kitchen table with my Bible open and pray out loud, asking God for wisdom and provision. At night, we would gather as a family, and instead of focusing on our struggles, we would thank God for what we had. My kids saw firsthand what it means to trust God when things don't make sense. And let me tell you, those prayers weren't just for show. I was leaning on God like never before. But the beauty of it was that my kids got to witness a real, raw example of faith in action. And guess what? God provided in ways we never imagined. Leading by example means showing your kids how to walk with Jesus, not just telling them to. If I want my children to love God, I have to love him first. If I want them to be kind, patient, and forgiving, I have to model that in my own life. They're watching how I treat their mother, how I handle stress, how I speak about others. More than my words, it's my actions that will leave a lasting impact. Now that my kids are growing older, I see the fruit of those efforts. Lauren, for example, has faced her own challenges in school, but she has learned to turn to God, not because we forced her to, but because she's seen how he has been faithful in our lives. That, to me, is the greatest success. Not that my kids get good grades, not that they achieve worldly success, but that they know Jesus and carry their faith into the world. So, if I could encourage parents out there, I'd say this: you don't have to be a perfect parent, but you do need to be a present one. Make your faith visible. Let your kids see you pray. Let them see you worship. Let them see you turn to God when life gets hard. Because at the end of the day, the greatest inheritance we can leave them is a faith that lasts.
Wonderful. And Lauren, from a teenager's perspective, how have these faith practices impacted you? And how has seeing your dad live out his faith influenced your own?
Honestly, Esther, Growing up in a home where faith was part of everyday life has made all the difference for me. It's not just something my parents talked about, it's something I saw them live out, and that has shaped the way I view God, myself, and the world around me. One of the biggest things that has impacted me is how my dad has always been consistent in his faith. I've seen him wake up early to pray before work. I've seen him read his Bible at the kitchen table, not because he had to, but because he genuinely wanted to spend time with God. Even when things got hard, like when he lost his job a few years ago, I never saw him panic or lose faith. Instead, he turned to God first. That left a huge impression on me. I remember one night during that tough season, I walked into the living room and saw my dad on his knees praying. I wasn't sure if he even knew I was there, but I stood in the doorway and just watched for a while. It hit me that his faith wasn't just for church or for us kids. It was real. He wasn't just telling us to trust God. He was showing us how to do it. That moment has stuck with me ever since. Being a teenager today is not easy. There's so much pressure, social media, peer expectations, the constant battle of fitting in versus standing out. I've had friends question my faith. Some have even made fun of me for believing in God. But because I've grown up seeing what a strong faith looks like, I know that following Jesus is worth it. I don't have to compromise to be accepted. I can be bold about my faith, even if it means standing alone sometimes. One of the hardest moments I faced was when a group of friends invited me to a party where I knew things would go against my values. I struggled with it because I didn't want to be the weird Christian girl who says no to everything. But I also didn't want to do something that would hurt my relationship with God. That night, I remembered something my dad always says. Every choice you make is building your faith or breaking it down. So choose wisely. So, I chose to say no. It wasn't easy, and I lost a few friendships because of it. But I also found strength in knowing that my identity isn't in what people think of me. It's in who God says I am. If there's one thing I've learned from my dad, it's that faith isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. It's about seeking God in the good times and the hard times. And now, as I'm getting older, I don't just rely on my parents' faith. I'm learning to walk with God for myself. And I know that no matter what challenges come my way, I have a foundation that will hold me. So, to other teens out there, I'd say this. You don't have to be afraid to stand out for Jesus. The world is always changing, but God never does. And when you have a faith that's real, it gives you the courage to face anything life throws your way.
Michael and Lauren, I have one final question for both of you. If you could share one piece of advice for families who want to grow in their faith together, what would it be?
I'd say, make faith a daily practice, not just a Sunday routine. Your kids need to see that your relationship with God is real, not something you turn on and off depending on the situation. Pray together, read the Bible together, and most importantly, live it out. Show them what trusting God looks like, what forgiveness looks like, and what love looks like. And don't be afraid to admit when you get it wrong, because sometimes the best lesson you can teach your kids is how to seek God's grace and start again.
For me, I'd say, parents, don't just tell your kids about God. Show them who He is through the way you love them. And to other teens, don't just rely on your parents' faith. Make it your own. Ask questions, spend time with God, and don't be afraid to stand for what you believe in. Faith isn't just for the older generation, it's for us too. And when you build a real relationship with Jesus, He gives you the strength to live it out every day.
What a powerful conversation. Michael, Lauren, thank you for sharing your hearts, your experiences, and your faith with us today. I know so many families will be encouraged by your words. To our listeners, if today's episode has blessed you, encourage you to share it with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, faith isn't just taught, it's lived. So, wherever you are, whatever season you're in, keep pursuing God together as a family. Until next time, stay fearless in faith.